Everyone talks about buying stocks early, but almost nobody talks about what happens after the hype dies. That's where the real test begins. And honestly, that's exactly what happened with Plug Power and Bloom Energy. A few years ago, these stocks were everywhere. YouTube channels were calling them future trillion-dollar opportunities. Retail investors were throwing money into clean energy without even checking financials. People thought hydrogen would change the world almost overnight. And for a while, it actually looked believable. Plug Power exploded. Bloom Energy rallied hard. Investors felt unstoppable. Then the market changed completely. Interest rates went up. Speculative stocks crashed. And suddenly Wall Street stopped rewarding dreams. Now investors wanted profits, cash flow, real businesses. That shift destroyed many hype stocks. And today, both Plug Power and Bloom Energy are trying to prove they still deserve long-term investor attention. But here's the interesting part. Even after huge crashes, people are still watching these companies closely. Why? Because if hydrogen adoption eventually becomes massive globally, these stocks could still become huge comeback stories. And honestly, one of them currently looks much stronger than most people realize. So let's start with Plug Power. Plug became one of the biggest clean energy hype plays during the bull market. And to be fair, the company had an exciting story. Hydrogen fuel systems, green hydrogen infrastructure, partnerships, government support. The vision sounded huge. Investors imagined Plug Power becoming a giant leader in the future hydrogen economy. That excitement pushed the stock above $70 at one point. People genuinely believed this company could become the next massive energy winner. But then reality started showing up. Quarter after quarter, losses remained heavy. Cash burn became aggressive. And investors slowly realized something dangerous. The future opportunity looked huge, but the financial situation looked unstable. That's where the problems started. Because speculative stocks survive on confidence. The moment investors stop believing growth will arrive soon enough, everything changes. And honestly, that's exactly what happened to Plug Power. The stock collapsed brutally. A lot of investors lost serious money. But here's the crazy thing. Even after all that pain, many investors still believe Plug Power could recover someday. And honestly, they may not be completely wrong, because if hydrogen adoption really accelerates globally over the next decade, Plug Power could benefit massively. That upside potential still exists, but the risk level is also extremely high now, and that's what makes this stock so difficult. Now let's talk about Bloom Energy. B feels very different from Plug Power. This stock doesn't get the same social media hype. People aren't constantly calling it the next Tesla, and honestly, that might actually be a good thing. Because sometimes quieter companies quietly execute better. Bloom focuses heavily on fuel cell technology and power generation systems. What makes the company interesting is its positioning around reliable electricity infrastructure. And recently, that became a much bigger story because of AI. This is where things start getting really interesting. Everybody talks about AI chips and software, but very few investors are thinking about the electricity side. AI data centers require insane amounts of power, reliable power, backup systems, stable infrastructure. That creates opportunity for energy-related companies. Bloom Energy quietly sits inside that conversation. And honestly, I think many retail investors still underestimate how important that could become, because AI demand isn't slowing down anytime soon. Now, does that automatically make Bloom Energy a guaranteed winner? Of course not. This stock still has risks too. Execution matters. Margins matter. Competition matters. But compared to Plug Power, Bloom currently feels more grounded financially. Less dependent on future dreams, more connected to real-world business demand today. And Wall Street usually respects stability over time. Now here's the twist almost nobody talks about enough. The hydrogen transition may take much longer than investors expected. That's the hidden problem affecting this entire sector. A few years ago, investors acted like hydrogen adoption would happen overnight. But real-world infrastructure takes years to build. Governments move slowly. Industries resist change. Costs remain high. Meanwhile, battery technology keeps improving too. So hydrogen companies are stuck in this difficult middle phase where they need investor patience while trying to survive financially. And survival matters now more than hype. That's why this comparison between Plug Power and Bloom Energy is so important. Because investors aren't just choosing exciting technology anymore. They're choosing which company they believe can survive long enough to actually benefit from the future opportunity. And honestly, that changes everything. Now here's the real debate investors are having quietly behind the scenes. Which stock actually offers the better risk versus reward setup right now? Because these companies represent two completely different investing styles. Plug Power feels like the high-risk lottery ticket. Bloom Energy feels more like the steady execution play. And depending on what type of investor someone is, their answer could change completely. If someone wants maximum upside potential, I completely understand why they'd choose Plug Power. Because if hydrogen infrastructure suddenly accelerates globally, this stock could move violently upward again. The upside potential is still huge. That's why many investors still refuse to sell despite years of pain. They believe the hydrogen economy eventually becomes massive, and if that happens, early survivors in the sector could benefit enormously. But here's the dangerous part. A lot of investors underestimate how difficult survival actually is. This isn't only about technology anymore. It's about financial endurance. Can the company survive long enough? Can it reduce losses? Can it maintain investor confidence? Can it avoid endless dilution? Those questions matter far more today than they did during the bull market. And honestly, that's where Plug Power still worries many investors. Now compare that to Bloom Energy. Bloom feels calmer, less emotional, less hype-driven. The company already works with real customers. Its technology already has practical business use cases. And now the AI infrastructure boom could create even more opportunities. That combination makes the company feel more realistic, not risk-free, but more stable. And personally, if I had to choose one company today based only on current positioning, I'd probably lean slightly toward Bloom Energy for long-term stability. Not because it's perfect, but because the business currently feels more grounded in actual market demand. However, if someone asked me which stock could potentially deliver crazier returns, if everything goes right, the answer is probably Plug Power, because speculative recovery stocks can explode once momentum returns. That's why this sector remains fascinating. The upside still exists, but the risks are enormous too. And honestly, I think many beginner investors still underestimate how dangerous these stocks really are. Clean energy investing sounds exciting, but survival inside emerging industries is brutal. Not every company survives long enough to enjoy the future opportunity. That's why execution matters so much now, and the next few years are going to be critical. If hydrogen adoption accelerates globally, investor excitement could return extremely fast, government support could increase, infrastructure spending could rise, and suddenly these beaten-down stocks people forgot about could become market favorites again overnight. That's entirely possible. But until then, Wall Street is watching balance sheets very carefully. And investors are becoming far less patient with companies that continue burning cash endlessly. That's the new market reality. Anyway, I'm genuinely curious what you think. Do you still believe Plug Power can eventually make a massive comeback? Or do you think Bloom Energy is the smarter long-term investment now? Comment below and let me know. And if you enjoy deep stock breakdowns without fake hype and unrealistic promises, subscribe to the channel because the clean energy sector is only getting more interesting from here.